Last year we did the top 10 most popular discs of 2019, and it was very interesting to see the impact on disc golf sales based on Paul McBeth signing with Discraft. Now with 2020 at a close, it's time to look at which discs were the most popular. And we're gonna provide you guys with a little bit of insight into each of these discs so that you can get a better understanding. But before we get into it, it's important to note that these top 10 are based on the sales of InfiniteDisc.com, one of the biggest online disc golf sales distributors. And with the giant boom of disc golf in 2020, there were some discs that were simply out of stock, especially for companies like Discraft, so it definitely had an impact on the disc golf sales. Either way, a big thank you goes out to InfiniteDisc.com for providing this information. So let's get into it. Starting off with the 10th most popular disc of 2020, the Innova TBird. Now the Innova TBird has a speed of 7, a glide of 5, a turn of 0, and a fade of 2. So it's a very controlled, overstable, beadless fairway driver that's really not too overstable. That fade of 2 really creates a great flight, one that flies flat if thrown at a good speed, but always has that subtle fade back to the target that you can count on. It can be thrown backhand and forehand, but it's typically used for those backhands. I love this disc. It's one of my favorite, and it was actually in my best 3 discs of 2020. So make sure you check that out. And I recommend this disc for more the intermediate to experienced player. Unless you're a beginner and you have a lot of power, you have a strong arm, you can probably try and use this disc. But that fade of 2 can sometimes be hard to adjust to for new players. Moving on to the 9th most popular disc of 2020, the Dynamic Disc Judge. It has a speed of 2, a glide of 4, a turn of 0, and a fade of 1. So it's a very stable straight flying beaded putter with incredible glide and a very subtle fade. So it's good for putts, but more specifically those approach shots, because it's great at those low ceiling tunnel shots where you really just need it to glide forever and go straight. And it's also good for slight turnover shots as well. And it can be thrown both backhand and forehand, but really more for those backhands since it's not very torque resistant with that one fade. And I recommend this disc for all skill levels because it is a putter, only a speed of 2, and the fade isn't that strong. It's also Dynamic Disc top selling disc, so it's no wonder it made this top 10. Moving on to the 8th most popular disc of 2020, the Gateway Disc Wizard. Now the Wizard has a speed of 2, a glide of 3, a turn of 0, and a fade of 2. So it's an overstable, beaded putter due to the fade of 2. It's great for putting, but it really shines on those approach shots and those off the tee shots because that fade of 2 really keeps the disc quite stable when compared to something that has a 1 fade, for example. Spin putters tend to really like this disc because it can take the speed of the spin and still stay stable. It comes in so many different plastics, over 8 dozen, which is always a good indication of a disc popularity. Now I recommend this disc for more the intermediate to experienced players, but I would say since it's a putter, most players can benefit from it. Moving on to the 7th most popular disc of 2020, the Innova FIREBIRD. Now the FIREBIRD has a speed of 9, a glide of 3, a turn of 0, and a fade of 4. So it's a very overstable beadless controlled fairway driver. It's a disc that when you throw it, you can predict the flight every single time. It always wants to come back to the target, and the fade is just so strong. Just gives you that guaranteed flight whether wind, rain, or shine. And it's really good for those skip shots when you need to get around a corner or simply get the disc pushing towards the basket. And it's used tremendously by those professionals, especially for forehands, because a fade of 4 means the disc is going to be able to take that torque, and forehands take a lot of torque. So it's popular for those type of shots, and it's no wonder that so many professionals count on this disc. Now I recommend this disc really for those intermediate to more experienced players just because that fade of 4 can be hard to control and can be hard really to just throw the disc if you don't have enough power. Now looking at the 6th most popular disc of 2020, the Innova AVR. The AVR has a speed of 2, a glide of 3, a turn of 0, and a fade of 1. So it's a stable, traditional beadless putter that is world renowned. It's great for putting and approach shots, but it really shines for putting since Innova has the AVR 3 and X3 that do better at approaching to the basket. It has a good amount of glide with a trusty, reliable fade at the end. So the one fade is perfect for allowing the putter to glide and fly flat for quite a ways, but then guarantee a fade back to the target so that you can develop a consistency with your putts. There are so many variations of this disc due to its extreme popularity, and it's actually my go-to putter. And it made the 3-disc every disc golfer should have video because I feel everyone can benefit from it. I therefore recommend it for all skill levels, especially if you're new and you don't know what putter to get to start. The AVIAR is a good choice. Moving on to the 5th most popular disc of 2020, the Discraft Zone. Now the Zone has a speed of 4, a glide of 3, a turn of 0, and a fade of 3. So it's an overstable, beadless, slim putter with a pretty thick rim. It's great for those long and further distance putts and closer putts as well, but it really shines for those approach shots where you need to get out of trouble and you need to guarantee a certain flight. Because of that fade of 3 and that speed of 4, it really shines for flick approach shots because it can take that torque. It's very torque resistant. I recommend this disc for intermediate to experienced players just because that speed of 4 with that fade of 3 can be difficult for newcomers. Now moving on to the 4th most popular disc of 2020, the Innova Wraith. Now the Wraith has a speed of 11, a glide of 5, a turn of -1, and a fade of 3. It's an overstable, beadless distance driver that is pretty much identical to the most popular disc out there, the Destroyer, but with one less speed. So it has exceptional glide, it really wants to go very far, but it's more precise. It's more precise than the Destroyer because of that less speed. You can really get more control out of the disc. And it's good in all wind conditions because of that neutral stability that the disc has, and it's good for forehands and backhands, and personally I use it for either or. Now a lot of pros are also choosing the Wraith over the Destroyer, like for example Garrett Gerthy, because he can get much more out of this and you can perform more shot shapes than the Destroyer because the Destroyer is just simply harder to throw. So I recommend it for more the intermediate to experienced players because of that 11 speed. Moving on to the 3rd most popular disc of 2020, the Discraft Luna. Now the Luna has a speed of 3, a glide of 3, a turn of 0, and a fade of 3. It's a more overstable beadless putt and approach disc made specifically for Paul McBeth. And with the speed of 3 and the fade of 3, this putter requires more power and confidence to use. It's really a hyzer putt type putter. And that's why Paul really likes it. He likes it because the disc isn't going to turn over to the right with ease. He can literally throw it pretty hard or putt it pretty hard, get it flat, but still maintain a nice hyzer so that it consistently goes exactly where he wants it. It has the same flight characteristics as the Zone, but with one less speed. And I know a lot of players bought this disc because Paul uses this putter, but I would say it's not recommended for most players because it requires that confidence, that speed, that snap for putting. I therefore recommend it for more intermediate to experienced players. Newcomers really should try something else with a little bit less speed and fade. Now looking at the 2nd most popular disc of 2020, the Discraft Buzz. Now the Buzz has a speed of 5, a glide of 4, a turn of -1, and a fade of 1. It's a stable, beadless mid-range disc known for really keeping any line you put on it, if thrown hard enough, with a nice subtle fade to finish. It's therefore a very stable and consistent disc, and it's one of the most popular, if not the most popular mid-range in the entire world. It's somewhat similar to the Rock 3, but with a little less fade and a little more turn if thrown with a bit of force. There are so many plastics of the Buzz and different versions as well with slight changes to their flight characteristics. I recommend this disc really for all skill levels. Anybody can get a benefit from using this disc, and it's really great for those one disc rounds. Moving on to the #1 most popular disc of 2020, none other than the Innova Destroyer. And yes, this disc was also #1 last year. The Destroyer has a speed of 12, a glide of 5, a turn of -1, and a fade of 3. It's an overstable beadless distance driver that professionals absolutely love because they can get a ton of glide and distance out of the disc. And it's a very controllable disc for them because they can still throw it really hard, get some turn out of it, but but they guarantee a fade back to the target. So a lot of professionals love it as their max distance driver, and it's a really great disc for forehands because the disc can really take that torque, and that's exactly what I use the Destroyer for. But I don't really recommend this disc for most players because most players are not going to have the speed and the power to get the ideal flight, so you're really just going to end up getting less distance than if you were to use another disc at a lesser speed. So there you have it. That sums up the top 10 most popular discs of 2020. We are honestly very curious to know what you guys think of this top 10. Is there anything interesting or anything that stands out? Let us know in the comments below. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. A big thank you to the JustDisc community for supporting this channel, for helping grow this channel. You guys are amazing. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so for more JustDisc content. We'll see you in the next one. Merci beaucoup et à bientôt.